Good morning, and thank you very much for having me to your lovely offices here on the Thames with the great view of the city behind. This is a real pleasure. My name is Tim Ringo. I'm an author, board advisor, and conference speaker on all subjects related to the workplace and the workplace of the future. And today's Tim Talk, as I like to call them, is about the 5 dimensions of workforce well-being. So workforce well-being is not just one dimension, and it's not just having a gym on the first floor. There's actually a lot more to it, and we're going to talk about that today. So let's have a look. So first of all, the first question is, do you thrive or do you survive in work, right? So change is constant. Change is constant. And this is the thing that causes the most stress, the most difficulty in terms of people's abilities to deal with what's going on at work, right? So it's change in competitive situations, it's change in markets, it's change internally in the organization, say when CEO moves on, a new CEO comes in. So this is the thing, and change goes faster and faster, doesn't it? So it's why workforce well-being becomes much more important than it's really ever been. But I think it's also important to understand there's a lot of different aspects to it, a lot of different dimensions, and we're going to talk about it today. But the most important thing to recognize is that, and it's really simple, right? Positive work environments, right, are places where people are engaged, they're enjoying the work, and they're highly productive. That creates business success, right? We all want that. Negative work environments, very, very different, right? It's stressed employees. It's employees not very productive, not very engaged in work. And the fact is, organizations kind of go back and forth between these two types of situations. But the idea really is to try to emphasize more a situation where you have more of the positive work environment than you do of the negative work environment. So this is why I say, and I ask the question, do you thrive or survive? Positive work environments allow people to thrive. Negative work environments are ones where people are just showing up every day and they're just trying to get through the day. So how do we shift things to the left side of this model? How do we shift things more to be in the positive side more and more often? What are the things that we can do related to that? So let's have a look at this. There's kind of 2 aspects of workforce well-being. There's the individual, right? So it's the person at work. And then there's the organization. What's their role in terms of helping people be well in their lives and be well at work? It's a good business investment, right? So let's look at the individual dimension first. There's 5 sub-dimensions to this. And these are the things that I sort of look for in terms of workforce well-being programs that are really best practice, the ones that really help to create that positive work environment. So the first one shouldn't be a surprise, motivations. If somebody's very motivated to work for you, very motivated in their job, guess what? They're a happier worker. And that's why it's really important to understand people's motivations and try to get them in the right job at the right time, at the right place where they can flourish, right? It reduces the amount of stress and potential negative days that come throughout the year. So motivation is absolutely critical as the kind of first step, the first dimension. And tapping into people's personal motivations is extremely helpful in terms of people's well-being, particularly mental well-being, but ultimately physical as well. Which gets to the next point, which is my mind. You know, how am I in my mind? And so it really is, and we learned during the pandemic, for example, that having people healthy in mind is very, very important. People became isolated during the pandemic, lots of stress. We've had lots of stress afterwards with the cost of living crisis. And so a lot of organizations are understanding that it isn't just about kind of the physical well-being or the motivations, it's also about people's mental health and how important that is. And many organizations, it's best practice, are making it okay to go ask for help and giving people resources to help to keep their mind healthy. The next one is the one that most well-being programs focus on, which is my body, right? So my physical wellness. So yes, it's absolutely important to potentially have that gym on the first floor. That helps people. Other people have other aspects. Perhaps you want to provide the opportunity for people to buy bicycles to ride to work. So it's these sorts of things we want to help people be fit and healthy. So a lot of organizations use smoking cessation programs and these things that just give people the opportunity to sort of use work as an opportunity to become more healthy in body, because that's very important as well. The next one is my connections, and this is increasingly important. Particularly with people working at home a lot more, we're finding that some people are reporting, well, they kind of lose their connections at work. It's a downside of this hybrid working, this kind of working at home and working in the office. And it's really important that organizations create that space and time and ability for people to meet, to come together like you are here today, in this session, to learn, to share, all those sorts of things. Those connections are really important. Having that cup of coffee with a colleague or three is really, really important. And then lastly, it's my resources. And this actually focuses more on people's financial well-being. And more organizations using best practice technologies and processes to give people the opportunity that if they get into financial trouble, they don't have to go and ask their boss for a loan. They can actually go into a portal at work and take a loan, a small loan against their payroll, and do that without necessarily having to go through HR or manager or those sorts of things. So people get into difficulties. The car breaks down, or there's other expenses that are unexpected. A lot of organizations are starting to leverage this approach to say, look, let's make sure people are financially okay, that they're not worried about money when they're at work. So that's the individual aspect, right? The kind of individual dimension and the 5 subdimensions. And that's kind of what people are looking for from the organization. So what's the organization's role in that? So let's have a look at their dimensions. So first of all, and this relates to motivations very, very strongly, but having a strong company purpose. There's almost nothing more motivating, really, than going to work every day for an organization that you buy into what they do. The product, the service. If it's public sector organization, you buy into working in the NHS. This is what you're about, right? And so company purpose, organization purpose is so powerful in tapping into people's personal motivations. And really, it's something that you can do quite easily to sort of help people be well at work, which is to provide a really clear company purpose, organization purpose that people can tap into. The next one is leadership actions, right? There's nothing more debilitating, and I use that word strongly because it is debilitating, but have leadership say one thing and do something else, right? Has a huge impact on people's wellness when they say one thing and do something else. And that is something you have to be very, very careful in an organization in terms of the types of things that you're doing to help people's wellness. As much as possible, it's important to sort of walk the talk, as we say in America, where I come from. So it's really important in that respect. And then the next one is kind of the organizational processes, the organization's sort of policies and things. Make sure that those map to and support what individuals are doing and aligns to their motivations and goals. And that's really important in that those processes not be used to be completely focused on compliance and trying to force people to do things simply for ticking boxes and those sorts of things. The next one is team dynamics, right? So team dynamics is super important. As we all know, we get into teams that don't quite work and the people together don't work very well. Well, it's leadership's responsibility to sort of step in and try to, if possible, solve those team dynamics. There's lots of tools that you can use. There's lots of team building exercises that you can use, but it's really important not to put together a team that's ultimately not going to get on. And it's good to understand those people in terms of their motivations, their capabilities, their skills, et cetera. And it's really beholden on the organization to try to create, effective team dynamics. And this is really important in terms, again, people's wellness, because it can be highly stressful to work in a team that the individuals just don't get on, right? And that isn't necessarily anyone's fault. Sometimes it's just the way personalities come together. So the last one is job conditions. And this is one I learned quite late in my career, actually, which was that I started asking my teams when I'd have sort of a monthly catch-up with them, a monthly check-in, see how they're doing and see how they're doing against their objectives and their personal development. One of the things I would always ask is, how's your workload? How's your chair? How's your PC? How's your work environment? And it was really interesting. What I learned from that is people will not go to the boss and complain, right, about work conditions. It's really something you have to ask, is what I learned. So let me give you an example. I had a woman in my team who was pregnant with twins, and she was really struggling with the chair she had at work because it really wasn't good in terms of supporting her back. So we went and bought her a special chair for women who are pregnant. And it was absolutely super for her, a really good chair. She was very grateful for it. But unbeknownst to me, a few weeks later, another manager, more senior to her, took that chair and put it in his office and was using it. And she never brought that up to me. It was only when I went to ask her during our sort of monthly checkup, how's that chair working out for you? And she said, well, the chair's disappeared. Unfortunately, manager X has taken it for his chair. I couldn't believe what I heard, right? And I wouldn't have known if I hadn't asked the question. So asking about job conditions. Anyway, so I went to that manager and I got that chair back, as you might expect. And so that didn't happen again. But these things are really important. It relieved her stress that she didn't have to come to me and complain about that. And the fact that I asked about it, it gave her the opportunity to bring it up and reduced her stress. So this is really important, to ask and try to support people in their job conditions. So lastly, to kind of bring it together, as you see here, you bring these two dimensions together, the individual and the organizational, right? And this is kind of how you get that end-to-end ability to thrive and not just survive at work. This is a model, and these are the dimensions that really, I think, and have seen in my own experience, are best practice in terms of giving people the opportunity to thrive. And these two things together are what make up a best practice well-being program. And the good news is you can actually measure these things these days, right? Something called organizational health, which McKinsey's invented. You can actually get organizational health index. You can baseline where you are today and measure where you are tomorrow and see the impacts of this kind of best practice well-being types of programs. And you can actually calculate the benefits of these types of programs. So these are measurable interventions, and ultimately interventions that create a situation where you can actually show progress over time and fix things that aren't working. And so the last thing I want to outline here really is think about how you think about well-being in terms of who does what and what roles they are and what's the focus, right? And you can see 5 clear steps here, which is really ultimately about the different roles, all the way up to CEO, from manager. What are your roles in this going forward in terms of driving it forward? And as we know, and we've seen lots of data, you've probably seen it as well, workplace well-being, workforce well-being is just good business. And it should make a lot of sense, right? Healthy workers, engaged workers, productive workers, working mostly in a positive environment are going to be much more engaged. They're going to be much more productive. They're going to be off sick a lot less, and you're just going to get better outcomes every time you look at that. And you can see here's a number of the types of things that organizations have been able to measure, and we've been able to measure at macro and micro levels in organizations. So that's it for me. That's kind of the main dimensions of workforce well-being. I hope that's been helpful in terms of thinking about how you're doing it today and how you might change. I just want to say thank you very much. This is more about me. You can zap the QR code there to get my business card, as it were. And you can also, my latest book, Solving the Productivity Puzzle, which talks a lot about workforce well-being and how it creates more productivity. You can zap that QR code there and buy a copy of the book. But thank you very much. It's been really delightful to be here with you today. Thank you for inviting me here to your fantastic offices here on the Thames. I enjoyed it this morning, and thank you very much.